What if the place Russia once called its frozen fortress, the symbol of its northern might, is now quietly falling apart? High above the Arctic Circle, new satellite images are revealing something unsettling. Bases that once stood as glittering outposts of strength now appear ghostly and still. The walls that once gleamed in the polar sun are fading. The airstrips, once symbols of power, look scarred and broken. Something is wrong in the far north. Something Moscow didn't plan on showing the world. For years, Russia treated the Arctic like the next great frontier, a land of promise, power, and untapped fortune. Billions of rubles flowed into its frozen edges. Engineers built sprawling bases across the ice, radar domes that could spot aircraft from hundreds of miles away, and airfields where sleek fighter jets once roared into the sky. It wasn't just about defense, it was about dominance. The stakes were enormous. The Arctic is changing faster than any place on Earth. Ice that's been frozen for centuries is melting, revealing new sea routes that cut thousands of miles off global shipping lanes. Cargo ships that once had to snake around Europe or through the Suez Canal could now glide through the northern sea route, right along Russia's coast, a potential goldmine in trade and tolls. And beneath that ice, a buried fortune, oil, gas, and rare minerals worth untold billions. Whoever controls the Arctic controls not just the map, but the money and energy of tomorrow. That's why Russia called this region its Arctic Crown. It built bases not just to defend it, but to make a statement. We own this frontier. But here's the twist. The same Arctic dream that promised riches and global prestige is starting to look more like a mirage. The proud installations that once stood as proof of Russia's reach are showing the scars of time and neglect. What was supposed to be a gleaming chain of fortresses across the ice now looks more like a trail of forgotten monuments, cracked, weathered, and quietly slipping beneath the snow. And as the satellites keep watching, the question grows louder. Has Russia's frozen empire begun to melt from within? So, what exactly do these satellite images show? From miles above the Earth, through the cold blue haze of the Arctic atmosphere, the camera lenses don't lie. What they've captured is a world frozen in time, and not in the way Russia intended. The once bustling military outposts that used to hum with activity now look eerily lifeless. Across Novaya Zemlya, long lines of concrete bunkers stretch like faded scars against the snow. The stark white of the landscape is broken only by patches of brown, rust, oil, and decay bleeding through the frost. Where fighter jets once sat ready for scramble, only the faint outlines of tire tracks remain, now swallowed by drifting snow. The hangars are silent, roofs dented, metal seams pulled apart by years of biting wind. Move west to Alexandraland, the jewel of Russia's Arctic expansion. When it first appeared in satellite photos years ago, it looked like something out of science fiction. Sleek geometric designs, bright blue domes, and the sharp symmetry of military precision. Today, those same domes look dulled, their color fading under relentless snowstorms and polar night. High-resolution imagery shows dark stains near the fuel storage sites, the kind that hint at leaking oil or chemical runoff, frozen mid-flow across the tundra. And then there's Kotelny Island, once home to the so-called Northern Clover, a sprawling triangular base meant to symbolize control over the eastern Arctic. But from above, the image tells a different story, one of neglect. Barracks are half buried under snowdrifts, windows blown out, antennas leaning like broken matchsticks. Rusting vehicles sit in crooked rows, untouched, their shadows stretching across the ice like grave markers. The landing strip, once smooth and meticulously maintained, is cracked and uneven, its edges flaking apart under the slow, steady thaw of permafrost. Analysts comparing the old and new satellite data point out the obvious. There's barely any movement. No tracks from supply trucks, no heat signatures from machinery, no new construction zones lighting up the dark polar nights. What should look like a living, breathing military hub now looks like an empty skeleton, frozen in place and slowly being reclaimed by the wilderness around it. Experts say that under normal conditions, these images would tell a story of rotation, repair, and constant upkeep. Crews clearing runways, vehicles moving supplies, the hum of activity visible even from space. But here, the silence is almost deafening. Instead of strength, the images whisper of strain, of bases abandoned too long, of plans buried under ice and time. And as each new satellite pass captures more evidence, a chilling question begins to form. Is this just weather damage, or proof that Russia's great Arctic vision is quietly collapsing before the world's eyes? But what could cause such massive modern military outposts to crumble so quickly? How did the pride of Russia's Arctic frontier turn into ghost towns swallowed by snow? First, it starts with the enemy no army can outsmart, the Arctic itself. This isn't just cold, it's a kind of cold that bends steel, cracks concrete, and kills engines overnight. Temperatures plunge so low that fuel turns to gel. Pipes freeze and burst. The air alone can frostbite exposed skin in seconds. Buildings meant to stand firm are slowly twisted apart by the expanding and contracting of ice beneath their foundations. The permafrost, once a frozen bedrock, is thawing, not slowly but alarmingly fast. The very ground these bases were built on is melting, shifting, and sinking. Runways buckle, storage tanks tilt, entire structures slide out of alignment. What used to be solid terrain is now unpredictable sludge that swallows vehicles and erases roads overnight. Even the most advanced engineering struggles to keep up with nature's quiet rebellion. Then there's the other battle, the one being fought in boardrooms and bank accounts. The cost of maintaining these Arctic fortresses is enormous. Every bolt, every pipe, every piece of specialized Arctic-grade equipment has to be shipped from thousands of miles away, often by icebreaker. Fuel, food, spare parts, all of it has to cross some of the most unforgiving terrain on Earth. And since sanctions tightened, those shipments have become even harder to manage. Wait a second. If you are new to this channel and you like what you see and hear, please subscribe, like, and join the conversation below. If you're not convinced yet, subscribe and tell us how we can earn that click. We're all about getting better together. Let's move on. With Russia's economy strained and its resources redirected elsewhere, the Arctic has quietly slipped down the priority list. Budgets once devoted to upkeep are now spread thin. Projects have stalled mid-construction. Supply chains are breaking down. Even basic maintenance, clearing snow, repairing roofs, refueling generators, is falling behind. When the smallest delay can mean frozen engines and burst lines, that neglect quickly spirals into collapse. And beneath all of this lies a deeper problem, perhaps the most human one of all: overconfidence. When Russia began its Arctic push, it was a bold, sweeping vision. Bases were built fast, announcements were grand, and the message was clear. Russia would dominate the North. But speed came at a cost. Corners were cut, logistics were stretched. The sheer distance between bases, hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles apart, made coordination a nightmare. Now, the cracks are showing, not just in the walls, but in the plan itself. Maybe Moscow underestimated how brutally the Arctic tests everything: metal, money, and morale. Or maybe it believed that sheer willpower could hold back the ice. Either way, the dream of a seamless Arctic empire seems to be sinking into the same frozen ground it was built upon. And if that's the case, the question becomes even more urgent. What does this decay mean for Russia's place in the Arctic? And for the global race unfolding around it? If Russia's Arctic strongholds are truly falling into disrepair, what does that mean for the balance of power in one of the world's coldest and most contested frontiers? For decades, Russia's Arctic presence was its silent warning to the world, a message etched in steel and ice. Those remote bases weren't just for show. They were a network of eyes, ears, and engines of control. From them, Russia could monitor global shipping, launch patrol aircraft, and assert dominance over the northern sea route, the icy shortcut between Europe and Asia that's now opening wider each year. But now, as the satellite images reveal silent runways and empty hangars, that message feels less like a roar and more like an echo. A decaying base isn't just a crumbling building, it's a symbol of weakened readiness. Without constant maintenance, radar domes go dark. Without supply chains, the runways freeze over. Without people, even the most advanced outpost becomes nothing more than a lonely relic of ambition. And make no mistake, the world is watching. NATO has been steadily expanding its focus northward, with joint Arctic exercises between the United States, Canada, and Norway, growing in both size and sophistication. American submarines are resurfacing in icy waters once considered Russia's backyard. Canada is upgrading its northern airfields. Even smaller nations like Norway and Finland are investing heavily in Arctic defense infrastructure. The timing couldn't be more telling. If Russia's northern defenses are losing strength, it creates subtle but real shifts in the region's balance. Patrol gaps could appear along vast stretches of coastline. Supply lines may become slower, leaving certain sectors exposed. In a part of the world where distance and weather already make response times painfully long, that vulnerability matters. But here's where things get complicated. Russia still holds the largest Arctic coastline on the planet. Its fleet of nuclear-powered icebreakers remains unmatched. Its experience in polar logistics runs deeper than any other nation's, so while cracks are appearing, it's far from powerless. Some analysts believe this moment might just be a pause, a regrouping before a new wave of Arctic investment. Others suspect it's a sign of shifting priorities, with the Kremlin turning its attention and funding elsewhere. Either way, one thing is clear. The Arctic, once seen as Russia's untouchable frontier, is no longer uncontested. The ice is melting, the world is moving in, and the power lines drawn across this frozen expanse are beginning to blur. The question now is, if Russia's stronghold in the Arctic is weakening, who's ready to move into the space it leaves behind? But here's the question few are asking. What's happening beyond the walls of these abandoned bases? When heavy machinery rusts in place and storage tanks sit untended, the environment takes the hit. The Arctic is one of the most fragile ecosystems on the planet, and neglect could mean leaking fuel, toxic waste, and chemical runoff seeping into melting ice and surrounding seas. Then there's the human side. Imagine being one of the few stationed there, cut off for months, watching supplies dwindle, and seeing your base literally crumble around you. Reports of low morale, poor living conditions, and shortages of basic materials paint a grim picture of life at these outposts. The truth is, the Arctic may still be Russia's frontier of power, but the cracks showing through the ice hint at something deeper, something far less stable than it appears. High above the Arctic Circle, the satellites keep watching. Each new image tells the same story. A story of silence spreading across Russia's once mighty northern empire. Bases that were meant to be eternal are fading into the whiteness, like old ghosts swallowed by the snow. But here's the thing about silence. It doesn't always mean the end. Sometimes it's the pause before something bigger. Is Russia quietly retreating, forced to surrender its frozen crown to time and nature? Or is this calm just the stillness before the next storm, a hidden regrouping beneath the ice? Because while the world studies every pixel of decay, Moscow stays quiet. No official statements, no explanations, just the haunting emptiness of places that once stood as symbols of strength. And maybe that's the most unnerving part. The not knowing. The Arctic doesn't forget easily. Every broken base, every spill, every flicker of light that goes dark is recorded by the cold, stored in layers of ice like pages in a frozen history book. And someday, when that ice melts, as it inevitably will, the truth will surface. For now, the satellites keep circling, the ice keeps shifting, and the world keeps wondering, has Russia's Arctic dream finally begun to collapse under its own weight? Or is something far more dangerous waiting just beneath the snow? Thanks for making it this far. It means you like what we do here at Eurobulletin. We will appreciate if you took 5 seconds to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on your views regarding the topic. See you tomorrow for another video.